Okay. Today's discussion is going to be on why does my gut hurt so much? So gut health. And we're going to be fairly quick so that people can get to where they need to be. I love this picture because this has happened to a lot of our nervous systems since GMO's been put on the market, and we're having a lot more inflammation, a lot more inflammatory diseases. Our seeds have changed, and they're carrying genetics that have been put in them that are not natural. They're genetic transfers. Scientists were able to put different genes in our food and in the plants, and we've actually been able to put them in interspecies, even plant stuff into animals. And there's been, a lot of people believe it's because the corporations want to, if they can control the food, they can control the people. So control equals monopolies, and Monsanto filed 144 lawsuits involving 410 farmers and 56 small farm businesses last year. They're buying up all the rights to the food, the seeds, and they've patented their part of the seeds, and they're putting terminator genes in now that actually make it so the seeds will grow one time and they won't produce a viable seed. So you can't save your seeds and plant them the next year. They're going to have control over all of the seeds. And they claim their patented seeds are leading to environmental improvements, and it's a total fabrication or lie, because they found they're using 26% more chemicals per acre on these genetically modified crops, which means we're using more herbicides, pesticides, all kinds of stuff. Americans are getting sick more often. 63% now have a chronic diagnosable inflammatory disease. And today we're going to kind of talk about gut health, and there have been new diagnostic diseases that they've had to classify and make a whole new ICD-9 is getting replaced with ICD-10, because we're having 2 to 3 new diseases every month. Okay, chemicals in the food. A lot of these, they say, they get washed off and they don't continue on with the food, and they actually, just before they harvest the food, they spray it again so that the weeds die off, and they're able to have an easier time not sorting out all the weeds that used to get into the foods.
Hey, Scott?
Yes?
Is there ever any health advantage to modifying seeds? Ever?
So far, they have found 0 advantages and a lot of disadvantages, because we'll go into that.
Okay.
How does the intestinal environment affect our health? 60 to 80% of our entire immune system is associated with the gut flora and the different things, and they found this altered food alters our flora in our gut. And it's interesting, you have all these aliens attacking the planet, and eventually they get a virus or a bacteria in their system and it kills them off. But us, we evolved with these bacteria and fungus that are good for us in our gut, and for the last 10,000 years it's been pretty much, we've been stable. And now that we're modifying the foods, it has made the flora unstable in our gut, and we're getting more pathologic type bugs in our gut, and it's causing our immune systems to go down. Cancer's increasing, inflammatory diseases are increasing, and it's caused our immune system to totally change. An interesting statement by Sylvia Brown, she's a psychic out of Chicago. She said that for people to survive the 21st century, which is where we're at right now, we're going to have to really take good care of our immune systems. And basically, these are causing problems. Dr. Michael Marsh is a agronomicist and also a biochemist, and they call him the godfather of celiac disease and gluten-related disorders because he started seeing the changes and started studying all of the changes that are going on with the gut and the gut flora. And he found that, you know, the gluten-related disorders and the genetically modified stuff. He wrote his first groundbreaking paper in gastroenterology in 1992, and he was exploring the pathology of celiac disease. And up until this point, 1 in 10 to 20,000 children, it was mainly a disease that kids would get. They'd get diarrhea, and they'd either die from dehydration or they put them on a gluten-free diet and everything. But he saw the causes of intestinal permeability and the genetics in celiac disease and the immune function of the intestinal mucosa, and wrote about that clear back in 1992. And the findings was GMO food was increasing the incidence of celiac and related abdominal disease, and gluten proteins are increasing the incidence of celiac and related abdominal diseases, and Bt toxins are also causing increased leaky gut and increased incidence of celiac and related diseases. So, in summary, he found that the genetically modified foods and the increase in the use of high gluten wheat and barley and rye, which was selective breeding, it has caused an increase. And some scientists and health scientists are saying we have 30 million cases of celiac now, and it's in adults. So that's 1 in 10. And a lot of people are thinking it's getting higher than that. So we're having a lot of problem. And one of the first things is, you know, acid reflux. That's one of the first signs or symptoms of celiac disease. And think of all the people that are on Prilosec and Zantac, you know, and these things actually decrease our acidity, which actually let bad flora and parasites into our system. And this all started up 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. How come you're not working? No. You will have to do it this way. Okay. 2,4-D, they have been spraying glyphosate, which is the Roundup. And they found that it wasn't effective anymore because a lot of plants have adapted and become resistant to the Roundup. And so they started, in addition, spraying 2,4-D, which is the active compound in Agent Orange and dioxin. And that has increased over the last 5 years. And they actually did studies on 2,4-D, and it effectively caused, you know, vomiting, weakness, different problems in dogs, lethargy, diarrhea, salivatory problems, problems with anorexia, neuromuscular weakness and diseases, and so caused a lot of problems. Another thing they're using now is dicamba, which was shown, it was a major component of Agent Orange, and it's similar to 2,4-D, except it's more water soluble, so it gets in the water systems and it gets into the groundwater quite easily, and it continues to cause problems. What indications are there that genetically modified foods are causing problems? This was, you know, for 2014 now, and so essentially about 13 years ago, The food is responsible for twice the number of illness in the U.S. compared to the estimates seen 7 years ago, and this was 12 years ago. And they're finding that 66% of the people in the United States are now diagnosable with a chronic inflammatory disease by blood test, which means there's a lot of people out there that are not getting their blood tested, like me. And I think I've got a sensitivity to glutens and Bt toxins and different things, because I feel better and I have less reflux when I eat non-GMO organic food. So when I say non-GMO and organic, it was interesting because, you know, I was really proud of myself. Kellogg's or General Mills, one of them that makes the rice checks and the wheat checks and the corn checks. Anyway, they started coming out with non-gluten products, which everybody's praising them for doing it. But the problem is, just because it's non-gluten doesn't mean it's non-GMO. And so we've got so many things going on that it's confusing for a lot of people. Because when I was at the store, you know, I was thinking, oh geez, it's non-gluten, I can get this, you know. I bought it, I brought it home, and Vicky's like, this has GMO corn in it, you know, and I'm like, I thought I was so proud of myself, and yet it still had genetically modified corn and genetically modified stuff in it, and so she still couldn't eat it. So it's interesting how we are influencing the big corporations through our purchases and our complaining, but the genetically modified part is not getting changed as quickly, and it's probably more dangerous. GMO corn and Roundup, this was a little video we were going to show, and I thought I got it fixed. So let's see if it'll bring it up. Hey, what do you know? I think it's going to work.
Good.
Cool. I had to put in the
web address?
Yeah. So let's see if it works. Oh, maybe it's not going to work. I don't know. Dang.
You're not holding it out
Am I
right.
not hooked up? I may not be hooked. I'm hooked to the internet. Interesting. Okay, here it comes. Takes a little while to bring it up. Okay, so we'll... This is a video that talks about, you know, all the GMO companies are saying, oh, it's never been proven that GMOs caused a problem. And the reason why is they haven't done any studies. And when the studies start coming out, then they prove that there is a problem. And so, oh Lord, I didn't hook up any... Okay. Wait. How do I get this to show up? Anyway, what it is a GMO corn and Roundup, and they did a study on it, and it not only showed it increased cancer, but that it caused cancer in mice, and they've actually been coming out with more and more studies. I don't know why that isn't showing up on there. Let's see if I can do this. Nope, still not showing up. Anyway, so I was going to show the research on the GMO corn, but I guess, how do we do that? I can't get it to show up on there. Oh well. So we'll get back to the slides and see if we can do that. Yeah. Let me see if I can get back to the slides. Okay. So, GM plants have been modified in laboratories to enhance desired traits, supposedly desired traits. You know, increase their resistance to herbicides, drought tolerance, disease resistant. And they've approved, FDA has approved the genetically modified plants. Now, traditionally, the FDA and the USDA would make corporations or different agencies show proof that it doesn't cause any detrimental effects or have, you know, studies done. And somehow which actually happened because both organizations got infiltrated with the companies that do this sort of thing. In other words, the CEO of Monsanto 20 years ago is currently heading up the FDA. And the USDA has a chief executive officer who was a lawyer that worked for DuPont. So these big companies have actually come in and infiltrated the governmental agencies that are supposed to be regulating. And they have antibiotic-resistant genes in them. We were just talking this morning about a lot of people are getting this mycoplasma. And mycoplasma penetrates the lungs, and it's been causing blood clots to develop in people's lungs, of all things. My nephew, he's living up in Salt Lake, 21 years old, big, healthy kid. He had an upper respiratory infection, and now he's in the hospital. Yesterday I found out, and he's got blood clots in his lungs, of all things. And this mycoplasma actually causes a reaction to make people be hypercoagulable. And they're thinking it's an antibiotic-resistant virus, bacteria that got into the lungs, and so they don't have anything to treat it with even. So, and the antibiotic-resistant genes have been used as markers within the genetically modified foods. By a marker, they can tell when the gene is in there because they put it in a petri dish with some antibiotics and it still grows because it's resistant to the antibiotics. So they know the gene got into the product. And so, you think about all the antibiotic-resistant infections we're getting now. It's due to these foods we're eating, and it's making our bugs resistant to antibiotics because they've got the genes in them. And so it's kind of a crazy way they've used to tell if something's been genetically modified. And pesticides are toxic by design. They call Roundup a herbicide, but it was initially called a viviside, which means it kills everything. So not only plants and animals and other things, it kills everything. And they found a bug. How they made the resistant gene is they found these bacteria that were growing in the water that had Roundup in, and they were living and doing well. And they found the gene in this bug that made it resistant to Roundup, and then they start putting it in the plants. Go ahead.
Well, no, they spray the field bacteria with Roundup. It doesn't kill the alfalfa or the corn. It kills the weeds, but they spray it with Roundup.
Yes. Right here. And our dog died 2 weeks ago. I believe. Well, we let her out and we had her on a leash, and she stepped on the neighbor's lawn, and he had just sprayed his lawn with Roundup, and within a month, she developed lymphoma and died. It was quite interesting, very quick, and we didn't really know, except the next day, all his grass was dead, and she had stepped in it, and he said, "Oh yeah, I sprayed it yesterday to get rid of, this." And he said, "Oh, I think I oversprayed it because it actually killed more than he thought it would."
Well, why, Scott?
Yes.
How can they spray that? And how is that why? Because they've modified them. That's why.
Yes, they've put the gene of this bacteria that was living in the Roundup, and it could live in it because it had it produced an enzyme that would break down the Roundup and make it so that it was resistant, so it didn't die. And so they took this bacterial gene and they inserted it in the corn and the soybeans and the cottonseed through genetic manipulation of the plant, and it expressed this trait, which is resistance to Roundup. Okay. Now, wheat. wheat is selectively bred to bring out certain traits, and they've gone away from the traditional Kamut wheat, which was the original wheat, and developed wheat that makes rises quickly. It makes a nice, easy dough, and they've been using quick rise yeast, which is a yeast that has been modified so that they get that easy. And when they started using this quick rise yeast during World War II, because they couldn't ship bread products to Europe to feed the troops because the fungus would eat it up before it even got there. But with this quick rising yeast, they found that it would last longer. And it's because bugs didn't want to eat it as much, and even the fungus didn't want to eat it as much. And we continued using this quick rising yeast. And they found if you go back to the slow process of culturing the starts of yeast that are pre World War II, a lot of people can eat the bread, and because it breaks down all the glutens, but it's a 3 to 5 day process versus 2 to 3 hours, and most of our stuff is being raised quickly, and it still has a lot of gluten in it, and it's causing gluten problems because our system can't digest the glutens.
We're okay with Kamut, right?
What's that?
If we got organic Kamut and make bread out of that, and then
Use an older culture though. You don't want to use that quick rising yeast because Kamut still does have a little gluten in it. But if you use the older starts, like my dad used to make sourdough and all kinds of stuff, those kind of starts are really good. And you have to let the bread sit in there for 3 to 5 days for this older fungus to eat up the glutens. The newer fungus doesn't eat the glutens. And so it's the older cultures that work.
I just started doing it, but it's not the older pre.
It's not the good yeast. We have to go back and use.
Somebody. I need to get your sister's name.
Yeah, Jolynn Werner. No, her name was Jolynn Werner when she was little. Jolynn Skousen, and she lives in Draper. I'll get you her number and address, and you can give her a call because she learned it from a lady who wrote a book on it, which is interesting. So we have a lot of crops that are Roundup ready. Alfalfa is one of them. So Donna's right. They're spraying Roundup on the alfalfa out there, and it's kind of sad. Sugar beets are also Roundup ready, and they have the genes in, and they do cause problems. So you can't use sugar that's from sugar beets. They haven't done it to the sugar cane yet, which is good. When I say yet, they're probably in the process of doing it. I mean, they're paying a lot of scientists to do this stuff. It's interesting because my son is a biochemist, and when he was in there, they're training them all that this is good stuff. They should be doing this, and they train them in it, and they can go to work for these big corporations and make a good living producing these toxic substances. The Bt toxin is kind of an interesting one, and it's affecting, they feel, the gut more than anything, because what happens with this Bt toxin, it comes from a bacteria that lives in the soil that normally breaks things down. And they found that this bug produces, they call it Bt toxin because Bacillus thuringiensis, but they've actually developed 6 different Bt toxins that they've actually genetically put into different products so far. And they found all of these products, all these Bt toxins, incorporate into our good bacteria and turn them into pathogenic bacteria, and destroys the immune system, causing autoimmune diseases. And it causes leaky gut, celiac disease, all kinds of stuff. So this toxin, the reason they're using it, believe it or not, is it kills the insects that may or may not eat the corn and stuff. But they've actually found that the insects avoid eating these products because they've already got the genetically modified Roundup stuff in that is very toxic to them. But they produced this because they said it would kill the insects that come and destroy all the crops and we'll be able to feed the world. But what they're actually finding is that it causes our immune system to get messed up. So, very interesting stuff. And again, they haven't had to do the studies and for the FDA or the USDA because they haven't had to do it. They bought them off. In 2012, they reported the biotech industry and Environmental Protection Agency said the BT toxin was safe for humans, even though they didn't do any studies. And some of these, this one that I was going to show the film on, showed that it poked holes in the cells, in human cells, and caused leaky gut. BT toxin in babies, they did a recent study in Europe that found in pregnant women it crossed through the placenta, and the BT toxin was found in the blood of all of the infants that the BT toxin was found in the pregnant women also. So it crosses over the placenta and causes problem with babies. We had a recent grandchild born in September. The baby was perfectly formed, except he had some respiratory problems, and he ended up dying from he ended up dying within 5 days, and the pathologists have no idea what caused his death. He was perfect in every way, but I believe he had this BT toxin in his system, and it made it so that he wasn't able to digest. His system had a lot of this bacteria, the BT bacteria in his system, and it just didn't survive. And the pathologists, you know, this is such a new thing, they don't even know how to recognize it. And so, what does this mean? That, you know, the intestines and all the permeability, and that it pokes holes in human cells. Well, they're starting, and these are all independent studies, and the industry is saying, oh, you're just against us. So they're telling the public, oh, these guys are crazy, you know, it's safe. They're still saying it's safe, and every study is coming out that, you know, if you eat a corn chip that is made from corn that produces the BT toxin, just one corn chip, the gene produces the toxin, and it ends up changing your gut bacteria and making them produce the BT toxin. And so they found that it just is continuous. And there's nothing we can do except get that bacteria out of our system and replace it with some good bacteria. And so it's quite fascinating. You know, everybody kind of knows what Roundup is. It's glyphosate, and it's a broad spectrum viviside, basically, and they're using it. You know, they're finding that a lot of cows are coming down with leaky gut and bloating, and they have to kill them. But in order to get them into the food supply, they have to kill them before they die, and then they can mix them in. You know, but these cattle and poultry and different things are getting the same problems that we're getting. So, and GMOs reduce the capacity for digestion because of their effects on the gut bacteria. And they're finding that we're getting lower levels of vitamin D, vitamin K. We're not absorbing our B vitamins as good because traditionally the cultures in our gut actually digest our food, and then it is absorbed through the mucosa. Once it's digested into smaller parts, we absorb it. But what happens with the GMO, genetically modified organisms, and the BT toxins is we get these holes in our gut. The undigested food enters through those holes, gets into our bloodstream, and causes reactions. My wife 2 years ago just about died. I guess it was only a year ago. And she underwent the testing to see what foods she was allergic to. Because what happens is when these foods, their proteins, get into the blood, our body can't digest them because normally they're digested in our gut. And through these holes, they come into our body. And because they're undigested proteins, they're bigger and our body can't digest them. And so they lodge in different parts of the body, and then our immune system starts reacting, trying to remove these big proteins. And they can't because the proteins actually have bugs in them that kills our immune system off. And Vicki was tested to, I think, 243 foods, and the first testing she was only non-reactive to about 15 things. And it made her very depressed because here foods she thought was okay were not okay because her body would react to them. And so for a couple of weeks she had to eat only the foods she was non-reactive to let her immune system calm down so that she could introduce some of the mildly reactive foods. She's got moderately and severely reactive foods also. And the list of the red foods or the severely reactive foods was huge. The moderately reactive was huge. The mildly reactive was quite small, and the non-reactive was even smaller. And it was depressing to me because I'd look at that list and I'd go, what the heck can I even fix her as far as food? You know, she's going to die without any food because she's reacting to everything. And somehow we got her by the first couple of weeks. So we've been introducing the mildly reactive foods, and she's been very fortunate because if she got even anything that was reactive, she'd be in bed for 3 days with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and even her muscle tissue was getting eaten up. And we found that as we have been taking good care to keep her away from the reactive foods, she's actually starting to get some of her muscle tone back now, and her nervous system isn't so crazy. So it's been quite an interesting episode. You know, here right in my own family, we're experiencing this. And there's many people that are experiencing it, and they go to the doctors and they put them on, you know, stuff for antacids and different things, and then they end up putting them on anti-inflammatories, even steroids to reduce the inflammatory response, which is totally the wrong thing to do. We need to be building up our immune system and taking more vitamin K and vitamin D because that helps. And I'm not going to go into the mice thing because they were given soybeans and they got pancreatitis. Now, I got pancreatitis 2 years ago. I'm believing now that my pancreatitis was due to genetically modified organisms. Okay, and Monsanto is an interesting company, and I don't ever want to talk them down or anything because they actually helped me get through medical school because I worked for a law firm defending them, and found, you know, that Agent Orange and dioxins were actually causing autoimmune disorders in people. And what's interesting is they found that it inhibits trypsin, which helps us digest our food because trypsin is an amino acid that actually helps make up a lot of the enzymes that help us digest food. And it causes a lot of gas and bloating, and then your doctor puts you on, you know, antacids and different things. And but it helps make the enzymes that actually build our muscles. And when I got my pancreatitis, I totally lost probably 20 pounds of muscle, which sucked because it made my muscles weak, and I was very strong. Very strong person, and I could lift stuff and do all kinds of things, but it got to the point where my muscles just weren't working. And a lady who got pancreatitis the same time as me, she was a bodybuilder, and she got this problem, and her muscles got real weak. And when we worked on the pancreas, getting the pancreas better and the liver better, the enzymes that help build muscle started coming back, and we got our muscle mass back, which is good. So, but we have to avoid these GMO products because they do cause problems. They found when they fed people GMO-free diets, and this is also including glutens, because glutens cause the same troubles. Irritable bowel syndrome went away. Crohn's disease is just another way of saying celiac disease. The diarrhea, constipation, muscle aches and pains, bloating, gas would go away. So it's fascinating. The body wants to heal, but we got to quit throwing stuff at it that irritates our body. And so I think it's real important. Heritage seeds are not genetically modified in any way, and so it's one company that didn't sell out to these corporations. And so if you want to start your home garden, it's really important in my life. We're going to have to start doing our own gardening, because that's the only way you can make sure foods aren't genetically modified. Because you don't know what you're getting in the store, because they don't have to label it.
Well, the GMO can float over from...
Exactly.
How do you protect that?
Well, you do greenhouses. In other words, you have to have an enclosed system to grow your crops. And here in St. George, you almost have to have a greenhouse anyway, because you have to have temperature control. And one of the ways you keep it cooler is you have a water supply that's in the system that helps cool the system. You know, get those little sprayers and put them up, and that cools the air and cools the temperature, so you can grow crops here in St. George better. Anyway, does anybody have any questions? I'm pretty much done. I don't want to go further because it's just more stuff. Yeah, don't let it depress you. Knowledge is good. Knowledge is how we can control our environment. If you have no knowledge, you just go do what everybody else is doing, and that's getting sick and going to their doctors and getting on these drugs, making them infertile. Literally, we're killing off the human population, because they found 33% of women in their childbearing years are infertile now. I mean, it's incredible. 1/3 of the women are infertile. And it's due to this stuff. And it's okay with the governments of the world because they want to reduce the population anyway, but my feeling is it's going to cause the extinction of humanity if we don't stop it.
When you buy vitamins and stuff, and they say they're organic, the FDA is guys telling you that they're organic. How can you trust that?
You can't. You can't trust it. You have to know the companies and the people running the companies. And thank goodness, most herbal companies are buying high-quality, organic, non-genetically modified stuff. And they haven't actually gotten into modifying the herbs yet, because herbs are an inexpensive thing. They don't feed us every day. And so there's a lot of reasons they haven't genetically modified them. And luckily, these genes can only be transmitted through same species. Like, they haven't found the genetically modified corn pollen pollinates the soybeans. They haven't done that yet, thank goodness. So you don't have interspecies transfer, but there is transfer within species.
What about, like, what are the vegetables that are part of the same family, like cauliflower and broccoli?
Okay. They're still different enough that there has to be certain circumstances where they can crossbreed.
Well, what
And
about,
see, I didn't realize grapefruit was initially a combination of lemons and oranges. I didn't know that. I thought that grapefruit's always been grapefruit, but they actually started doing grapefruit in the 1930s.
So we shouldn't eat grapefruits?
No, they're not genetically modified yet.
Oh, okay.
Yet.
Can it get in the water system?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So you have to have covered water also?
Yes. Yes. A covered water system and covered plant system.
How far down in the ground does it go?
I don't know.
If your corn plant is right there and it's full of GMO, and your neighbor it's gonna be in the root, how far down?
They haven't
Because the
found
water's
that
gonna be down there somewhere.
they haven't found that it will transmit the genes through the roots. It's mainly through the pollen.
Okay.
Yeah, mainly through the pollen. And the way they've won all these lawsuits against all these farmers is the pollen from GMO crops has gone over into the fields of non-GMO and cross-pollinated, and then they start carrying the trait, and then they sue them over the patented gene and win the lawsuit and take away their farm.
Right. I
So it's
heard
kind of
that
side.
story.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, when I traveled across the country, when we went the first time, there was all kinds of crops.
Yes.
Clear across the country. It was beautiful to see.
Oh, yeah.
It was beautiful. They were gorgeous. And the last time we went, 9/10 of what we saw was corn.
Yes.
And they had one place we came to, they had some kind of a study going on, and there were these little bitty ones over here, shriveled and not doing very well, and these great big gorgeous ones over here. And I said to him, I said, what are they doing there? Because there's some kind of a college doing a test, you know.
Yeah.
My guess now is that it was a GMO study.
Yeah.
going on.
90% of our schools teaching farmers, teaching agronomy, are being ran by the corporations. And they're teaching them to sterilize the soil, which is totally wrong, because the plants actually get their nutrients through the same way we do. The good bacteria in the soil digests the bigger proteins and the different things, and it helps the plant absorb minerals and vitamins and makes the plants really healthy. What they found is in sterilizing the soil, which Roundup does do, it's a viviside. It kills the bacteria, it kills plants, it kills everything that's not resistant to it. And so that's why they're ending up getting genetically modified weeds now, is because they're surviving and passing their genes on. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff. And the bottom line is we've just got to make sure we feed our families good, organic, non-GMO, non-gluten food. Go ahead.
So do we know what organic starters are using instead of Roundup?
Well, organic farmers go out and pick the weeds like I used to do when I was a kid. My grandma would send me out to the fields and we'd pick the
Two
weeds.
goals, yeah.
You know, we didn't
Yeah.
spray the chemicals. We actually manually pulled those dang things out. I probably pulled more dang plants out of my garden in my life. And you know, I quit spraying anything. When we moved over to our house right now, I quit spraying everything. And it's so interesting because we have more birds at our house and more different things come to our house because they know they're safe. And, you know, I haven't sprayed Roundup. I used to spray Roundup when I was young. You know, I'd go out and I'd kill weeds in the cracks in my sidewalk. And now I go out and I try to kick them out or pull them out or whatever. But I found out Roundup was really bad probably 10 years ago. And that's when we moved into our new house, and I vowed I would not use these things. And it's been really interesting because everybody around us uses these chemicals. And it's hard to live free of these things when everybody's spraying around you. So the Spirit came to us 2 years ago and told us we needed to move, because we were starting to get sick. I got my pancreatitis 2 years ago. And in praying about it, I got really strong. We needed to move away from a bunch of neighbors spraying all these chemicals. And, you know, education is what's going to help us.
But it's overwhelming too. I mean, greenhouse,
Well,
water.
but where do we start? You know, we start
Start little and go up.
with
you know?
education. And believe me, if your family becomes infertile because of these chemicals, your family will no longer exist after about 30 years. You know, you won't have progeny. And so you won't have to worry about it. You know, obviously a lot of us are saying, okay, hopefully Jesus will come by then, but you know, who knows? We're gonna, you know, we're exterminating the human race through our technology. Go ahead.
In the early 80s, I subscribed to a scientific magazine for my kids because I homeschooled and I thought it'd be great for them to read stuff. And I read an article clear back in the 80s that said they were taking rat genes and putting them in tomatoes because tomatoes weren't surviving very long.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's got to be in New York or something. Well, so a few years later, I accidentally did an experiment. I bought a bag of tomatoes, left them on the counter at the ranch, came to town for 2 weeks. And it was summer.
Yeah.
And when I went back to my house, the tomatoes were perfect.
Yeah.
They hadn't rotted at all. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's in St. George. Oh my gosh, I've been eating rat jeans. and it was clear, it was in the 80s.
Yeah, big, nice
you
tomatoes.
You think it's not going to happen here because we're St. George. Nobody cares about us. But it is happening here, and it's been happening here for 30 years.
See, tomatoes are a nightshade, and they've been changing nightshades for 40 years. It's interesting. That's why a lot of people are getting allergic to nightshades, by the way. Go ahead.
I just had an epiphany. Okay, so I, in the past, did buy organic vegetables and stuff.
Right.
Well, I realize now that I might not be organic gardening because of my compost pile.
Yeah, who knows? Those bugs end up becoming, if they're genetically modified, they end up in your compost and...
Do they ever break down or it just goes into the soil?
Well,
Or do you have
go ahead.
What about using the diet?
Hey, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm not trying to be depressing.
No, you're not
I'm trying to
doing it.
educate.
No, figure out where to start. It's like for compost. I mean, where's it all going to end? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Where's it going to end? What can we do?
We're going to have to create our own little world.
What about using
On
the
what planet?
diatomaceous earth in her garden because that kills pesticides?
The diatomaceous earth is shellfish. The little diatoms. That's why they call it diatomaceous earth. And they found that it actually is helping with people with celiac. Because we get a lot of parasites and stuff when we get celiacs. And it helps kill off the parasites and bad bugs. I don't know.
Well, I was reading about that yesterday, though, actually. People put that in their garden and it kills off the pesticides.
So maybe put them in my
Put them back
compost.
in your compost.
It's
Yeah,
just
I-
like white powder stuff right above your head.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know that
I've
diatomaceous
never
earth
put-
will do that, but I need to research that.
My garden is my grandpa's garden.
It was perfect before Sophie got there.
I have never put any. I've continued the organic gardening, and I go out there and pull weeds. The reason why I was asking is because I have this weed that just totally took over. Well, I just found it out.
We have pigweed now in St. George.
Yeah.
It's the most interesting thing. I went out and this little weed was about this tall, and I thought, oh, I'll pick it out this weekend. Well, that damn thing grew 5 feet in a week, and it's called a pigweed, and it is resistant to Roundup.
It's resistant to everything. And they're,
I don't know that
they
my
go-
particular
They go down deep. I grew up
Yeah.
with them, and my brothers could not get far enough down to get them out.
Yeah, that plant is causing huge problems in Iowa and Kansas and Nebraska because it's resistant to the Roundup and it overcomes the corn. And so that's why they're using the 2,4-D, and believe it or not, they're resurrecting DDT, which was banned because it kills off birds because their eggs they can't form a shell around their eggs. And so it's interesting how they resurrect things that should never be resurrected, but they are.
Question, then. I haven't actually put any of my compost into my garden yet, but if you do have a garden that has had, compost, GMO, whatever, how much could you do that? Just put it on top and fill it in?
Put some diatomaceous earth with it.
Google that and read about it. I've got nothing but good reviews on that. Yesterday,
Yeah.
when I was reading about it, people were using that in their gardens.
Yeah, I actually bought some more diatomaceous earth that should be here at the store while we're in Hawaii. So.
I drink it every day.
I wonder if you could put coconut oil in it too. I mean, it'd be expensive, but coconut oil would kill a lot of stuff.
I don't know the answer to that. Intuitively, you'd be better off to just take the coconut oil yourself, because putting it in, it's not testing that it helps. But it does help humans
Helps you.
because it gives you the medium chain triglycerides. Coconut oil is very good for you. I was just reading an article that says that it's good, taking it internally keeps you from getting sunburned even. So that and astaxanthin and vitamin D, keeping your levels of vitamin D up. So
Coconut oil if you put a tape, I read this a couple of years, well, a couple